Okay, this is really terrific piece that we're on now. Let me see if I can find a place. All right, I see that. I think we got to page Kuf Lamed Vav. Let's just discuss though. This is a deep piece. So, looking at the top, it says going back to page Kuf Lamed Gimel. Right? It says. Let me get this straightened up. It says Glufi de Galifim. Now he said. I think that the way that I understood this was the Birurim come to the Mochstimah. The Mochstimah generates actually the beard, I think. And then he says that the Birurim settle on this first tikkun, which is kale, and over there they develop some concept. They become a kli, so to speak, that could hold light. And the nature of the kli is that the backside of the kli is klipos. And he said that this I'm not sure how it works, but the pattern works all the way through from Etzilus, all through all of the parts of Partsufim till through the Partsufim of Asiya. That's kind of pretty much what we talked about. So let's go up to the top of page. Let me get myself lined up. I'm not lined up well. Let me see if that will work better. Okay, so he says like this, and let me move this off of here. I don't know. Okay, I got to work on this. Okay, the umispashe lakan. So he says that the first, we understand the broken malachim, the first one that died is Melech Hadas. Mispashe, the yamin is small. So the olam harishon, it spreads right and left. Ke'adas kolu chesed gevorus, it has a right side in it, a left side in it. V'hem mispashtim, the yamin, the small, and they spread down those two sides, k'dugmas haksafim, just like as if they were shoulders. Ki kosef yamin, hu besod hachesad dedas, because small hu besod hagavoros dedas. Now I'm assuming that he means that the shefa comes down through the neck and it reaches the shoulders, which are a broad place, and it goes horizontal. That's the way I understand it. That's why he says Kosef. Hu besod hagavuras dedas, which means it's the right side, right shoulder, left shoulder, or that horizontal part. V'lechein Kosef is a gematria of 500. And in all of the Mizbech HaMeish Meos, it comes to the count of 500. Ki chamesha chasada dedas nechvalim, so they get multiplied in such a way that they become chamesh meos, which is the secret of the concept of the Kosef Yamim. So I guess what he's talking about is this concept, but I thought we were talking about building these Keilim. So he says, so we have two sides, Kosef on the right, v'chmo kain chamesh gevuras dedas nechvalim gam kain v'chamesh meos besod Kosef small. So you have two things here that really, why do we choose the number 500? What's the significance of this? What's the 1,000 got to do with it? If you put the two, and what are we building here? We're building some sort of anatomy. So he says, you put this all together, halol yachad the bisber elef. It comes, if you put them all together, it brings the number to 1,000. Ugnegdam is pasha the klipa. Now corresponding to the development of this is the klipa. The klipa that are developed is pashta b'klipa b'chasada b'gavuras the das shel yamin is small. So there's also, when as these kalim are developed, then you also have the development of klipas on their outside. But so the chizis of Chitzoniut be'etz das tov. Now maybe this is the reason why he calls it Chitzoniut, because they come on the outside. V'hu sod elef yamim dechol shall sod hagalos. Now that makes some sense, but not a whole lot. He says it's the concept of 1,000 years of weekdays, which is the secret of galus, of the exile. I guess he means to say, now just adding it back up again, he says that is the fact that the klipas are on the outside of this, and this is the concept of the days of the 1,000 days of weekdays. So it's also the concept of exile. Gam sod elef yorim. Also the concept of yor is, my understanding, is a concept of some kind of a canal or a large river. Shemispashtim chetziim the sad yamin, that half of the river splits. part of it goes to the right, shehem chasadim is pashtin to Zer Anpin, and they go to Zer Anpin. V'chetzim is pashtin tzad small, shehem hagavuros is pashtin the nukva that ultimately wind up going into the nukva. Now, in between the two, now he just introduced that idea, incidentally, that there's some, which we know, of course, but he says that there's some space between the two of them. So he says, in between the two of them, you have the hovering of the snake. The height of b'makom chiber hakasfayim, that is in the place where the two shoulders, which to me seems like the neck, but I don't know, the two shoulders shall Zer Anpin, ha'omdim ach ba'ach, which are standing back to back. Now this, I'm thinking of my own body, and I guess you could say that the right arm and the left arm are meeting. What part of the meeting of it is their backsides. Now that's what I could hear him saying. So the whole concept of acharayim is the concept of dinim. Because in the dinim, all of the klipos hold on. So in other words, we know that the Zohar will tell you that sinning makes blemishes or flaws, and this is a place where klipos can get a hold, but in general that's where they're at anyway. Asher bechem ne'achazim klipos on the backside. So sometimes it spreads the nachash, this serpent, which he has said is in between the zoch and nog. He says, "Anachash mispashet tzad small," so it starts spreading down the left line. Zon v'beresha, and it has its head. It sounds like circular. So he said, "V'olam arisha anachash hadas mispashet lamata v'cholomas bri yitzir nesiya." So he says it doesn't just stay in that one world. Now I'm still trying to figure out what he means by zon v'beresha. Now he's not answering it yet. So he said, "V'ikaro b'rosh olamos," and the beginning of them is at the beginning of the world, Shuhu Olam Abriya, which is Olam Abriya. Let me read the sentence again. He said, "V'Olam Arishon Anal Shuhu Hadas Mispashet Lemata B'Olamas Briya Yitzir Menasiyah." The first one of the named worlds of the Hispashnos, V'Ikar V'Rosha Olamos Shuhu Olam Abriya. So when we talk about the Olamos, the first one is Briya. But so Elef Mare Tracing. So there's a secret here of the 1,000 shield bearers that exist in the first Hechel, Shal Olam Abriya. And from that position, I guess he means I really don't have in front of me which one is the Hechel Schus. I know that Libnus Asaper is the lowest one. I don't know which one is Hechel Schus. But he says from that Hechel, it's academic, we could look it up. So Behechel Schus Shal Olam Abriya, so in that first Hechel in Olam Abriya, and it spreads down to the bottom of it, which is Olam Asiyah. Now this is his interpretation of this phrase Zon B'Beresha. Just sort of remember in my head that I thought that the Leshem had talked about a circular formation at the top of the head. Maybe it's not talking about the same thing. So it comes out like this, that the tail is holding on to the head. So he said, so in other words, it's attached to the head because it's one flow of these development of these Keilim. This is apparently what we're talking about. So let's talk about that. What actually has it spread? Min Olam Abriya, from the Olam Abriya ad lamata b'Olam Asiyah, until we reach our world. Ki hinei noideh she'olam habriya hu sod ima. That's a nice thing to hear. He says that the concept of olam habriya is the concept of ima. V'olam yitzira hu sod Zer Anpin v'olam harasiya. Okay, we understand that the sod down deep is nukva de Zer Anpin. V'hina yitzira v'harasiya. So let's talk about those two, which represent zon. Shehem zer v'nuk. This is the way he writes it. Zer v'nuk. V'nukva. So let's go back. They're in the situation where they're back to back. But so the das hamispashit because fine, which is the secret, are like the fact that now let me start that again. He said v'hine yitzira v'rasiya. Okay, zun shehem zar v'nuk heim ata bebechinas ach ba'ach. No problem. But here's where it says besod hadas and their backness, their back. The backness of them He says, Hadas, Mispasha Kasvim Canal. So this situation of back to back, since the shoulders, he's saying, are back to back, everything else are going to be back to back. Resha Achora Kisvin. So Kasvin. So he says, Ki Harosh Shuhu Olam Habriya. Now, he changed the paradigm. Before we were talking, the Rosh was originally the first Peah, was the word Kale. Now we went to a different place. We're talking about the shoulders now. So let me just trace that back. That was for the concept of the formation of this ability to make Keilim, or somehow this carving out that makes Keilim, and it spreads all the way down, he says. Now he says, a Reisha Achra Kasbin. So the beginning of the Ol Olamos, which you're calling the Olamos now, which is Bia, Shuhu Olam Abriya, Shuhu Besod Ima, which we said is Ima, he ner mispashi b'benach ha'aras adas ba'achrei ha'kasvim shel Olam Hatzir. And so how this works is what was the trouble? The subject is Harosh. So the beginning of the Olam Abriya, which is Ima, it spreads down, it's the line of its das onto the back of the shoulders of the next world. Shuhu Sod Zer Anpin. V'ha'aras hadas hazosa nimshachas derek achrei kasvim shal olam yitzira el olam asiyah. So we had this concept of this das spreads down the backs. It spreads down to the shoulders, and the shoulders are back to back. And so then this same concept, whatever is flowing out of that das of the upper world, which is Bria, flows down onto the backs of the next, then so on and so forth. But we understand that these two are back to back. That's where I understand it. Shehi so nukva omedes ach ba'ach im zer anpin. Now let's go into it more. He says, you like that? Here we go again. Inyanut. So the is like this. When you start talking about ach ba'ach shazer anpin v'nuk. So with zachav and nuk are in that situation where they're back to back. He says, it causes them to go to sleep. So he says, mistalkim. I'm sorry. He says that they leave the mochim of das of zer anpin, they pull out. So then what happens there is the das of ima, ba'achre hakasvin de zer anpin, goes around the back. I have to read it again. He says, Dahainu mistalkim hamochim v'chadas b'zer anpin. Now, I don't know that we talked about the fact that the mochin are going to be mistalik from Zer Anpin. Let's say they do. So now Zer Anpin, he has no das. Shemistalkim hamochim v'chadas. All the mochim are gone, and das Zer Anpin is back to being a vok. V'oz mispashet es ha'aras hadas the ima. So now we're just working with the das of ima. V'achrei hakasvin de Zer Anpin. So this is talking about a Nasira situation where the Mochin leaves Zer Anpin, and he says which Mochin are going to come into the Nukva. They're going to be the Nukva. They're going to be the Mochin of Bina, because Bina is going to go right into the Nukva. Now, this is an interesting idea. He said, now let's look at them. He says they have this problem. That's where you see the action of the dinim and the klipos, which are on the backs of everything. So there's a tremendous amount of foaming anger over there. And that is, that anger is directed, as we had seen different things in Zer Anpin, is that his right side, or I'm not sure it's his left side, can be directed, I guess, through his middle line at the dinim. But that's not, he's not saying that. So let me go on. And now they start fighting the klipos. In this way, they're humbled down, and they're under control, they're subjugated. That's the word I've been using. V'nim talking hadinim who sowed hapasuk, and then they, as a result of that, this action starts to sweeten those dinim, and they come to v'hu sowed this pasuk, kail zoan, the God is foaming, the foaming God, meaning is extending his anger. Pirush shem kail, that name kail, the kail that exists in Yitzira v'Rasiya, koes v'zohim al hadinim v'haklipos k'dei l'hachniim v'lachash visam. So my question is that where the word kale come from? Well, it's in that pasuk. I see that. And kale was also the first tikkun that he was talking about, which is the place where the birurim go. So I'm thinking that we could understand this easier in terms of oivi. Is that once you move from the category, the column, let's say the column of Atzilus, then you're going to have the same column in Bria. I think that's what I have to conceive of it at this point. So he says koes v'zom, so it starts attacking the dinim, v'klipos kedei lahachnim v'lahash bizim, and get them to quiet down. He says, let me put this over here. So this, which he says is Bria, is Ima, the first Olam, how Olam the Mispar Aleph, which comes up into the count of 1,000. Now, how did it get to 1,000 besod base Pamim Kosef? And that's the concept that we want to learn. And I know that I saw this before in the Chasdei David in the back somehow. Not that I understood it. It's better in the Mabu Sharim. I think that they actually might explain it over there also. Because that's ultimately where, when I was learning with Cronenberg, he actually took us over there. Ela besod beis pamim kosef canal, v'nim shachin lamata ad kasvim da acharayim dezer anpin v'nukva. So they come after that. Now you're in this situation. Now the way I understand the situation is that the mochin the godless, which is Atzilus, left Zer Anpin, and Zer Anpin is now left in a state where he's in some sort of an exile because he doesn't have that. And he says the mata the ksas with the achram to Zer Anpin v'nukva. So everything flows down into that. Shehem sod yitzirim nesir canal. So this concept here, I think, is this the one I looked it up? No. So he says this 1,000 is guarded, nishmar, minachizis aklipos. So where do we get this 1,000? The 1,000 was the two shoulders. So he says the shoulders themselves are guarded from the klipos. But so the pasuk in this pasuk elef l'chal shlomo or Messiah notrim as period. So I see the word ha'alef. I thought he saw when I looked down below or somewhere else. I looked at it. It refers to the concept of guarding. So he says ha'alef lo shlomo. Umasayim lenoitrim as perio, and there were 200 that guarded the fruit. Whoops, I lost them. Okay, I lost you there. I don't know where you were exactly, but I'm trying to figure this out. He says, let's go to the top of this column. Which is the Olam Abriya. Ha'olam the Mizbar Aleph. So we said there's two shoulders there. They come to the concept of 1,000 besod beis pamim kosef, which is the concept of the back shoulders. V'nim shachin the mata ad kosvim the achraim the zer anpin. So the first one, v'nukva. So from Bria, everything falls into Yitzira Nasiya, Shehem Sod Yitzira Nasiya Kanal. So this 1,000 is guarded. Now, what does it mean? Nishmar. He says, Menachis is a klipa. So the klipos can't get a hold of it. Besod ha'pasuk, ha'alef l'cha, shlomo, u'masayim the noitrim is period. This is all lashon, he says, of guarding. So it's guarded in such a way that the klipos can't attack it. V'gan is chad l'alef yamin zeirim. Now, this is and it's hidden away for 1,000 days, zeirim, small days. V'gan is chad l'elef yamim zeirim. Let's get a translation. He said, v'shorish adinim ganuz ba'echad min elef yamim ketanim v'nikroim elef yamim dechol. So this concept that we had over here, I guess he's talking about when the Mochen are leaving, and now you have the 1,000 days. It's one of those days. He says, v'shorish adinim ganuz ba'echad. It's in one of the 1,000 yamim ketanim, the small days. These are the days of exile. Hanikroim elef yamin dechol. Shehem zman shel his gabros adinim, which is the time when the dinim become much more powerful. V'achizes chitzoniut, and the fact that they're on the back and they're chitzoniut. Sheshorshe nigdikazim hu be'elef almim shel chasadim v'gevuras the das the alma kadimoah. Let's go over the words. He says shorish yonikazim. Where is the root? Where the kali nurses or sucks or feeds. Who be'elef almim shel chasad v'gevuras. It's a tukas fayim. It's the type of the concept of the chasadim, the gevuras of the das, the alma kadema of bria. So he said, "V'ikri his gavros hadinim v'achizas kitzonim." So the main thing that gives them their strength, nimshach mitzad koisle acharayim dezer anpen v'nukva. Where do they get their strength from? They get their strength from the backs of Zachar v'Nog. Besod hanachash harovetz bein hayorim, which is the secret. How about a nachash is like an alligator, I don't know, a crocodile. So in any ways, it's a snake that is hovering bein hayorim, between the different streams. Shuhu b'makom kiber hakasvim, which is particularly the place where the two shoulders come together. Those are two backs. Shel zer anpin v'nukva ha'omin ach ba'ach, which are now standing back to back. So let's just look at the picture now. He has Zochar v'Nuk back to back, and we see them getting, I think, off of the area from Bria. Let's just say from Bria. I don't know exactly how it works in Bria, but all the shefa that they get, which comes down between their backs, is coming from Bria. And so haganus be'echad ben elef yamim zeirim. Now that particular phrase not particularly understood. So he says they get all of their snakes. Who bechinas shorish dinim, the root of the dinim, makana be'echad min elef yomin zeirim. So it's one of the 1,000 small days, exile days. Now, what did he mean by one of 1,000? So he says ki what? Because you take the 1,000, you're going around in a circle here, and it gets divided into two 500s. And I'm not sure how we got to this. So he said the Hainu 499 l'tzad zer anpin, 499 l'tzad anukva. So you have these two shoulders, but the shoulders are missing one. So he says is 1 out of 1,000 is the source of the dinim. That's a difficult idea. V'od koisel echad shel achrei zer anpin. And now let's take like this: one wall of the back of zer anpin, shuhu be'emsa, which is, understand, it's right in the middle, because in between that is the middle or the backside of the nukva. Mischalik chetzi l'tzad zer anpin v'chetzi l'tzad the nukva. Now what's its objective? There's a wall that runs from the back of one of them to the back of the other. Then the Zachar v'Nuk have a wall. The Harei Kan b'Sefer Mispar. Oh, there it is. Elef Chaser Echad and Echad. And this is why we have. That's the place. We said that one place is 1/1,000th of the two of them. Really, is the shorsh, or maybe it's just one because there's one wall between them. It's this wall. So this one wall. That takes two different backsides. Sham ganus shorish hadinim va'achizas haklipos kamor. So that's the place. There's one place. He means the wall. That's the place that the klipos have their strength. Now, just to after we saw that, I just wanted to show you. Where would it be? I think it would be over here. On page, oh wow, there's a whole thing of other biurim, there's a whole section of this book that has other chachamim who have come and brought us explanations of this. So, very mysterious world. Now, let's go to the next, let's go to the next one. Reading at the top only is Galia. So he says, instead of revealed, it could be filled. Ismalia. Kultra dekitrui. Now, I don't know what kultra means. I didn't see it real quickly in the explanation. So his bekitro means tyings or bindings. So his galio kultra, I guess it means the bindings. Not sure. Bekitroi. Sanpira b'adboy. So I guess it's I don't know what they mean. So we'll say sanpir is a fin. Ba'adboy in the chest. Isba resha kamayim the yamarabba. It breaks the head like water that flows into the Great Sea. So we said we brought the heads of the snakes with water, or al hamayim. The mayim does it. I don't know what that means. So he says, trin havu. Well, actually, he says there's two. Chad is chazru. One of them is going backwards. Taninin ksiv chaser. So then you see that the word taninim, tanim, has two yuds in it, or it could. It should have two yuds. Taninim should have two yuds in it. Ksiv chaser. So it's written without one of the yuds. Roshe. So then you have this word roshe, which sounds plural. Kamadat Dharma, like you say like this, Udbus al Roshe Hachaya Rikia. So this translates, I know because I saw a little bit of this, and we'll try to analyze it. He says the Demus al Roshe, the head is on the heads of the animal. Like the animal has more than one head, and then there's a Rikia, some sort of a Rikia. The only thing I saw by the Rikia was the concept of this wall between Zochav and Nuk, but that's all I can think of right now. I'm guarding. I had a real mess here yesterday because of that spill. Okay, let's go over here, and now let's try to look at the Pirush and try to understand. And again, is Galia Kultra Bekitrui. I guess Kultra? Okay, let's go. V'kol ha'amala elchu b'shasha zer anpen v'nufa ondim ach ba'ach be'ez b'chidas shina, because this is the time we're talking about specifically here, I guess. The time of Shina is really the time of, well, it goes with Purim, which is coming up now. Be'ez b'chinas Shina, because you have this concept of sleep. It means it's preliminary to a yichud. But that's the position that they're in. The Oz Nimshach is Gavras Adinim V'Chagavuras, because in that situation the Vuras Adinim come very strong, Mitzad Koisle, over by the walls of Acharayim, the Zer Anpin V'Nuk, and that's the place they start building up because there's darkness in Zer Anpin. Besod Hanachash Harovez Ben Ayorim, and this is the secret of that snake. So the snake he wants to say is these Klipos. So he said, V'Huv Sod HaPasuk Hasheni, and this is the second pasuk. And the pasuk says, "V'haaretz chaysa tohu avohu," and the land was empty and dark. But let's talk about the extension of this idea, which is that eventually the light coming into the nukva makes her strong enough to become independent, and she could become pana b'panim. Is galil kultra bekitrui. Now let's see what the kultra is. Ozniz gala ha'or. So he says kultra apparently is the word light. Shel chasadim besod kasher hayichud shel zer anpin v'nukva. So the tie between the two of them. Let me read it again. In this situation, shel zer anpin v'nukva chozim pana b'pana. Now is galio kultra bekitrui. Ozniz gala ha'or. He said that what kultra sounds like the word or. It's the light of the chasadim besod kasher, and it's in the secret of a tie. He says, "Hayichud shel zer anpin v'nukva." It's a secret of their binding themselves together. V'hu soda pasuk shlisha. There's a third pasuk. Where it says Yehi or, let there be light, because now there's going to be light. Aromad lehis galas or, which is the fact that they're now coming together. And that's it. Okay, we'll start there. Mitzvah. Okay, that was the end of that. Okay.